Hey, want to spice up your tracks? Try some of these tips. Hello, my friend. It's so nice to see you again. Thanks for joining me for another video. My name is McDuffee. I am a music producer, composer, and recording artist. Be sure to check out my music on Spotify or anywhere that you stream tunes. Today I'm going to be talking about 8 specific ways to spice up your tracks by way of one-offs, things that happen once in a track to keep that focal point, keep that interest, textures, sound design elements, vocal processing, what have you. So, let's talk about it. You actually might want to watch this entire video with headphones to really get the benefit of any of these examples. Editing Megan from the future. After the fact, we noticed that my mic was a little hot in this video, so just ignore that. You've been warned, and let's get into the video. For my first example, I want to talk about contrasting vocal treatment, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Here, I'm going to be looking at my recent cover of Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication. I have a specific vocal treatment that I use throughout the song. However, on this one particular phrase, I really wanted it to kind of stand out, and I really wanted to break the expectation and pull your focus. Have a listen to this. Notice the specific vocal treatment on one particular phrase.
Teenage boy with a baby inside, getting high.
Here it comes.
Inflammation. And buy me a star on the boulevard. It's Californication.
I felt like this broke up the vocal treatment on the rest of the chorus and verses and just gave it a little bit of extra flavor. It's kind of like, oh, it forces you to pay attention. Alright, the second thing I want to mention is adding texture. In my song Break, I threw in some really cool textures to make it more interesting. The ears perk up. This is what that noise sounds like by itself. Cool little filtery, stuttery effect. I pepper those in throughout my tracks, and I find that it just keeps things interesting. The third example of things that I like to do to spice up my tracks is adding sound effects or samples. These are specifically different than adding textures in this particular song. I worked with Alex, and he and I added a bunch of these cool little vocal things. So I'll show you what I mean. The guy says it's more horrifying than I expected because it fits the track so nicely. Here's just the voice sample on its own.
It's more horrifying than I expected.
I just like throwing in these kind of interesting, strange vocal things, textures, what have you, to keep things from becoming dull. Next is transitions, and specifically a transition I love to do all the time once in a song so that it doesn't get repetitive and lose its magic sauce, is to add a reverb swell on the end of a vocal phrase into another section of the track.
But the ghost of your spree will drive you insane. Clicking the blade, dancing.
I love this. It brings an epicness to a specific moment in your track that you want to highlight. I love doing this to vocals, and I specifically love it as a transitional element to go from one section of your song to the next. And here are just the vocal layers.
Drive you insane. Clicking the blade, dancing on my throat.
Okay, next on my list is layering percussion. This might be a semi-obvious choice, but layering contrasting, off-tempo, polyrhythmic percussion to your track can do some wonders. So I have my song Lovely Psycho here as an example, and the final chorus, I add just a touch of extra rhythmic elements to just oomph and emphasize the final chorus. Here's how the track sounds earlier on. Now I'm just gonna play the drums and Now the extra percussion layer, and then the full track. It's just another point of interest to break the monotony of what came before. Tip number 6 is kind of similar to the first tip about contrasting vocal processing, but this one is narrowly focused delay or some other effect on a specific element of your track, such as vocals or drums. For example, in this cover of Placebo's Every You, Every Me, I felt like there was some spice needed in between vocal phrases just to give it a little bit more something, a little bit more secret sauce. So I'll show you what I mean.
Every me and every you, every me.
Just on that one word, little pop. Here are the vocals soloed, just so you can more clearly hear what I'm talking about when I say the narrow delay that I put on this.
Every me and every you, every me.
This song is kind of repetitive. The melody stays very consistent throughout, so I felt like for this track in particular, it really helped to have just that little sizzle.
Every me and every you, every me.
It just brings a little something extra, and I think it worked really well on this track. This is what I call the listener expectation hack, or rather, breaking the listener's expectation. Typically, you have a pop common structure, verse, chorus, bridge, etc. With this, I like to throw the audience a curveball. And what better place to do that than on the bridge, where you are expecting something different, but you're expecting more vocals with lyrics and similar treatment to just sort of flow from one section to another. In this track, I felt like experimenting. So that's the end of the chorus. What? There's one of those little textures. Rhythmic breathing. Super strange, super creepy. People probably weren't expecting that coming off of a typical pop structure. So, throwing the audience a curveball. Great choice. Our final spicy tip, which is also a very simple but often overlooked thing, and that is utilizing panning. Plays really well in headphones. Here I have my score to the Ash vs. Evil Dead game that just recently came out from Way Forward and Retro Realms. This synth that I love to use all the time, I'm bouncing it back and forth between the headphones, and I think it adds something. Not only does it add a point of interest and excitement for the listener, but it gets it out of the way of what you actually want to be the focal point in the center. So if you're having problems with your mix, try some panning techniques. Try moving things back and forth. There could be a whole video on mixing tips and tricks. Let me know if you want that. Let me just solo this real quick. I just find that so much more interesting. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and checking out these tips. I hope that you find them useful, or at least a jumping off point as inspiration to get weird, because you should get weird. This was by no means an exhaustive list. Mess around, find out, try these things. Tell me if you end up using any of these, or if you already do use some of these tips in your own work, in the comments below. Finally, if you want to hear more of these example tracks that I've used, I have linked them all in the description box. I will see you next time. Happy producing!